and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to be using set number 10 here, that's nature set number 10, to create kind of an aged-looking antique photo look to a scene, or try to, and that's on the vintage, the pre-printed vintage paper here. Someone asked if I was actually using vintage paper or paper that was, printed to look vintage, and it's the latter for sure. Just a cheap pack of, I think it was 60 sheets, was it? Of this type of paper. All right, now we're going to keep this pretty simple. All the imagery is just going to be stamped in VersaFine Clair. I found the Clair stamped very dark, or the darkest of all the blacks that I tried on this paper. The paper seems to be slightly sealed, so it'll give me a deep dark impression. Okay, so because I'm stamping it in a pigment ink, all my images in pigment ink, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on the images that would matter, I'm going to wipe off the edge of these a little bit. These are called my transition zones right here, where those little dots just kind of transition off. I want those to stamp lighter so that when I blend images into them, these images, or impressions, they'll blend together a little bit more gracefully. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by that when I stamp this out here. Let's go about like so. I'll go about midway up this. You can stamp it higher or lower. We're stamping on an 8.5 by 11. I mean, an 8.5 by 5.5 sheet, just a half sheet of the letter size paper. Okay, and let's see. I don't know if you can tell, but I've wiped a little bit off around on the perimeter. Okay, so that's kind of stamping the foundation. A lot of people, when they first start off in scenic stamping, if they look at a finished piece, they're kind of confused as to where you start. There's not like this obvious kind of starting point where you would stamp one thing, mask it off, stamp another object within the piece. But I like to start with foundations, okay? It's just like kind of, if you're going to build a diorama, you would build the floor and then you would build everything up from there, okay? It's kind of the same type of concept. You can also look at it as you start off with your kind of larger objects, and it's easier to work the smaller ones around it. Now, that's not always the case, okay? Like sometimes you want to stamp something specific in a scene, and you're going to, work everything around it. There's not just one way to do it, but the way that I started people off in my workshops typically, when I did in-person workshops, was that I would have them just pick out like their main image, a large image, okay? And like a lake or a river or a, who knows, cabin, etc., etc. And then they would stamp that out, and then they would work some sky around it, above it, usually. I mean, they could stamp a lake really high, and then the sky could be in the water as a reflection, so. Okay, so this is the sedge filler, and what I'm doing is I'm going into this curvilinear road. You can do double impressions with this too. And then we're going to fill this out. Now I'm going to continue this road down this way. If I stamp this really low, then you don't have to build out anything on the base part like this. But what I'm going to do here, I won't wipe this one off. I mean, you could, but you just kind of fill in like that, all right? And you kind of come into the road a little bit, the road image. Okay, now down here, I'll build that like that. Okay, see, so I'm just kind of building with that sedge filler like so. It's fairly dark imagery, because it's black, but it is kind of more of a texturized looking image. Now down here, what I'll do is I'll just kind of use that at an angle like so. Alright, now this is really thick ink, so yeah, maybe I will wipe off the edge a little bit. This area down below, like so. Okay, but see that right there where I've angle that so that road has this continuous, I don't know, whatever outlet or whatever, or you can call it entrance maybe. All right. So very thick ink. All right. So we have this kind of texturized area in here. Maybe I should have come in here a little bit more with that texture. We can still do that. Go like so. And you have that. So you have your foundation with which to build your other imagery on top of, okay? So it's like your platform down here. All right. So set number 10 has the Country Chapel small stamp in there. And let's use that. This set is on the cling foam. It's the cling foam version of this set, I should say. So I don't need my tack and peel, but if you have the unmounted version, I use tack and peel on my blocks, okay, so for that temporary mounting ability on my blocks. Okay, so we'll just use the same ink for everything again. Now let's stamp this chapel. We'll put it right up here on the... I'm kind of moving it in a little bit here. We'll put it right up on the bluff. Okay, so I have it right there. Now if you stamp it lower in here, watch out for all of this texture being in the chapel, so stamp it high enough. You don't want to stamp it... Now if we stamp it way too high and it's like there's space in between the curvilinear road or sedge filler, let's say I stamped it too high and then there's this blank space in between, then just take your sedge filler and fill it in underneath and over the slope that you've created. Okay? You can just keep filling in with the sedge or accordingly. All right? Okay, so that is, it's kind of our main foundation. You know, what is this scene about? It's about, you know, this road and that chapel. You know what I mean? No matter what else I put in here, you know, that's going to be the dominant visual theme of the piece. Okay, this is the tree cluster right here. They're really similar to the trees behind the chapel there. Now, the way you use Stampscapes imagery, you know, I've used a lot of this imagery in its entirety. I've used the sedge filler in repetition when it comes to your filler styles of textures, okay? Now, here's one of the really main things about my imagery is that I design things to be used in partials as well as wholes, okay? So we can stamp out our trees. I'll show you what I mean by that. Now see, I'm just kind of wiping off the base here a little bit. Those transition zones, it's a bunch of little dots down there. I only do this because it's in the thickest, darkest ink possible, which is VersaFine Clair, okay? You don't need to do this with everything. Okay, so using the stamp in its entirety, okay? Well, it's going off the page out there. But, okay, let's ink this up again here. And let's take a mask, okay? That's your mask right there. And let's put, see this slope right here of the road? I mean, this isn't just how you have to do it, but this is an example. I'm going to use a smaller portion of the tree, okay? And I'm just masking it off with a torn paper towel. Let's see, you can get smaller versions of that tree. Let's go in the distance here with some other trees. Now maybe I'll use a smaller portion. So see, I'm stamping more of it on the paper towel then. Okay, don't stamp it right over your chapel, I don't think. I mean, you could, but you would obscure it. But see that? Those trees? You want to go with some really small ones. Just use the tip. I don't know if it represents smaller trees or just, you know, the rest of the tree is behind, you know, that slope as it moves down the hill or something like that on the far side. Okay, but you can even do, you know, some smaller trees. It doesn't mean you have to use, you know, smaller portions of it for the distance. You can go like this here. And you can have some smaller kind of, you know, juvenile trees or something like that. Just younger trees here in the foreground. Okay, so I'm deciding if I want any more of these in here. I think that's pretty good for right there. All right. Okay, now a stamp that's not in the set, but I'd like to use it as filler imagery, especially down here. See, this looks really kind of blank right here, right? So I'm going to use my Tiny Rocks stamp, and I'll use it in repetition, okay? I'm going for first impression, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. So I get different values of that same impression, and I don't want it all strong, like dark, 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 you know, like that. I want it to look texturized, and in nature, whatever you're looking at, there's usually different values of things, okay? If I want some rocks out here, you can even put some out here in the grass, okay? I don't know, it just adds a little bit of extra texture. Okay, I use this so often I just leave it on here. This is my smallest of acrylic blocks. Okay, now I think this could use, I don't know, some foreground in here. I've been really enjoying using my fences lately. So I think I'll go with a fence, like right in here. I'm going to use, I've been doing it with, this fence kind of curves in like that, so if you use it, it kind of curves in. But over here, I think I'm just going to use this portion of it right up here. So it's like a kind of an opening to this, you know, road leading to the chapel, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so we're inking it up. And I'll go roughly about here. There's no, like, set point. It's not like I'm going to be stamping that fence and I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I was off by a quarter inch. It's, you know, it's wherever you want to put it. Yeah, fences are, you know, continuous and things like that, but, you know, these are stamp scenes. And it's also artwork, so you're kind of doing things to create your own kind of visual, I don't know, kind of dialogue within these pieces, and you have to take your artistic license. I would say at times, but almost all the time. Okay, this is another smaller fence. Maybe I'll put this on the other side of the road. Maybe I'll just go... let's see, I have to get used to looking at these fences in both ways. These distance ones kind of curve around something, but I think I'm going to do it... Let's see here. Let me see which one it is here. Okay, now that one curves a little bit too far, but you don't have to use the whole, you know, the whole length of it. You can come in here like this. I think I'm going to go up to about there, right? You know, I'm going to create a little bit more of a straight fence. I might go up to this one, but this one part where it starts curving around, that's because that curve around, you know, goes with, you know, the other fences, all right? Okay, so that being said, let's get this mounted up here. I haven't used these too much so far. Not all of them. I've been using the foreground ones a lot. But let's see. I definitely designed these to be used in certain ways, or have the ability. I just haven't used them yet. So here you see me testing things out as well, okay? All right, so that's where I'm stopping right there. I'm stopping right there where it starts curving around. Let me see if I can keep track of it here. Okay, so it's roughly right there. And I'll go to about right here. Okay. I'm going to extend this down. I came down a little bit far on that one. No problem. And let's see, I'm going to extend that part out with this fence, okay? All right. So let's see. Okay, so I'm just inking up this portion of it. You gotta get these fences and kind of get a feel for them, play around with them a little bit in terms of the matching. Now this is where kind of using a positioner could help. Okay, but I don't have one, so I am just going to eyeball it. Let's see where I've wiped off that. Okay, there's that post right there. I've wiped off the edge, so I'm going to go roughly right there. If it doesn't match up, I'm not going to sweat it too much. It matched up decently. Okay. And then if I want to, I can continue that one around too. You know, like this right in here, or I can go with this fence right in here. I think I'm just going to leave that like that. Because I don't want to obscure that distant area in there. So we get the point of the fences too, you know. And I don't know, it gives us, I'm using it more as a structural lead-in than like this true enclosure, you know, to a location. Okay, now here's my bottom portion of the sedge filler. You can just use certain portions of even your filler imagery, okay? So you have to kind of get used to or acclimated to using portions of your stamps to your benefit. So it's kind of getting familiarized with it and not looking at stamps only as a whole, okay? You're looking at them in terms of partials as well, and then you can really get your money's worth out of your imagery because you're using them in so many different ways. So you might look at a stamp. See this tree right here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like 5 different tree stamps that way. You know, to be used in partials, just so you don't have to get 5 different trees if you don't have it. Okay, now naturally, if there's a different shaped tree or something like that, different types of trees, then you can, you certainly can integrate them with your pieces, but, just by using partials of your existing ones, you can really extend everything out, to your benefit. And that's what I'm doing as a designer of stamps, too, because, I'm going to be using my stamps as much as anyone, so, when I'm designing stamps, I want there to be kind of an economy of movement. So if I can get 5 stamps in one design, 5 different types of designs in one design, or multiple stamps in one design, I'm going to do that as a designer because that's going to save me time. Then when I'm using my stamps, I can use it in multiple ways, not just kind of a one-dimensional way. Okay, this is the little strolling couple right here. That's what it's called, strolling. And I'm going to put them on this road. Okay, now here's the thing. I'm going to try to get them all on the road like that, because if I have them up here with the fence in back of them, I won't be able to see their silhouette very well, okay? Because, the tree will be right in them, okay? So we have to go a little bit lower, or whatever, accordingly. Now see, if I was doing this in color, I might have the grassy areas in like a brown or something like that. And if I stamp them in black, they'll stand out against it because, the brown would be lighter than the black. So, you get those area objects, in this case people, standing out. Okay, so let's do something here. I didn't know if I would use it or not, but I think I have room for this horse in here. Yeah, I'm going to put the horse in there. Let me show you a little trick I do on objects standing in the ice. Now they're standing on the road, okay? But this horse is standing in grass, so I'm going to wipe off its feet so it's like standing in tall grass. You won't be able to see the feet. Okay. Now I'm going to try to position them accordingly. Let's see, I can put them, the horse right around in here. So the lower you stamp it, it represents something a little bit closer to us. Okay, so I'll put that horse right in there. I mean, you could put other ones around in here. I don't want to get the scene too busy, but I don't know. If you're a beginner on this, I say make your scenes real busy. Play around with things, fill it up, have fun with your pieces, and then you can get a better feel of kind of what the ideal amount of imagery might be in any given area. But it also will teach you how to kind of mellow things out and to integrate your different images in with one another. Okay, so I have a lot of things going on in here right now. I wanted to utilize a lot of the images from, nature set number 10. Just because it's a set there doesn't mean you have to use like all of the different images in there or something like that on any given scene. You can use one image out of that scene or set. Okay. All right, this is a quote stamp. I thought it would look really good in here with kind of a word stamp. I mean, this is, this vintage stationery that I'm stamping on, so, stationery looks good with, letter form words. So why not give that a try? Okay. Now I was thinking about this. This isn't real super woodsy in here, but maybe this kind of represents something like Back to Nature. Their chapel is out, in the country or whatnot. And this is kind of that, I don't know, that notion. These people look very antique looking, so it's like, the New World or something. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to use this leaf stamp. It's sold individually or in a set form. And I thought this would fill things out a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to do this in multiple impressions to get different values of leaves, okay? So here's the first impression, here's the second impression right there. I'm going to be careful not to stamp it over my letters, okay, my word stamp, okay. You can overlap certain things, but I think when it comes to lettering and typography, unless it's lettering and typography is used as just like a texture, I think we don't cover up lettering and typography like that. I know that goes back to my lettering and typography days in school on how to treat text and whatnot. That's how I came to design my word stamps in certain ways. It took me forever. It took me longer than drawing things. It was the hardest class I ever took in college. And graphic design wasn't my major, but a lot of graphic design classes were a requirement. And my gosh, it was from the class was being taught by the dean of the graphic design department. So it was tough because it was a class that he used to weed out all the prospective graphic designers, and if they couldn't handle, your beginning typography class, then you're not going to be able to, handle kind of the upper division stuff and get through the program. It is so intense. Okay, so filling that in there like that, it gave it a really good canopy, and I think it kind of goes within the theme of in the woods, you know what I mean? We're out in nature, okay, so we're standing underneath that tree in there. So, okay. And let's see, let's make some room here. My desk gets rather cluttered with stuff. I'm deciding on whether or not I want to add in some of these reeds in here. This isn't in set 10 here either, but if you've watched my videos, you know that I use this image quite a lot. So we have a lot of grass represented in the sedge filler, right? So this is a way to go in and add in this kind of notion of that similar form, but much closer to us. So when you add in something large like these leaves in here, or this reed type of imagery like that, what we're doing is we're extending the field of view in here. All right, things are much closer to us now. We have stuff that's 3 feet from us, as well as a distant 100 yards away or whatever it might be. Where before the fence was the closest thing to us, maybe that's 6 feet from us. I don't know. And then you add this grass, 3 feet. If you've added 3 feet of space or whatever it might be, okay. Depends how tall the grass is, right? Okay, so that is that. This whole process goes pretty fast in terms of completing a pretty finished-looking piece, okay? Now, okay, the Claire is really super dark. Okay, I'm just going to use it to keep things really simple as far as the media that we're using on this piece. But this is really super dark, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this. We could be done here, but I just think that we can finish this off a little bit better and more fully by just doing some tweaks in here, okay? I haven't added any kind of shadow work in here at all, or kind of compositional little tricks that I like to employ in my pieces. Let me try this right here. I'm going to use one of these infused cotton rounds. You can use a cotton ball or something like that too, to apply your ink, okay? My VersaFine Clair is like super juicy. It's a pretty new pad as far as like pads go for me. I haven't had it for too long. I think I bought it this year, and I haven't been using it a lot. I've been using my Brilliance pigment ink a little bit more because it dries on other things. But okay, so here's, I'm dipping right into the Clair, and okay, so this is perfect right here. I'm doing it on the cotton, so there's not a big slathering of it. The cotton is not, it's not like coming into contact with like my finger right here and getting this like super dark slathering of it in a stroke like that. So putting it on something like a cotton ball or something like this cotton round, I don't know what these things are even called yet. When I start applying it in here, okay, what I'm going for when I start using this is I'm going for a little bit of a vignette look. So I'm going to darken my corners like this, and that will contain my imagery a little bit better, okay? And it also kind of mellows out some of the textures that are going on in the piece in the form of these leaves. It's a pretty, busy texture up there. So what you do is, when we're doing this little vignette here, okay, this works pretty good here. I'm just tapping, I was wiping like that, and that's what I usually do, but this little kind of super light tap here is getting me this nice little vignette. So see that right there? It kind of closes this off, and it decreases the contrast between the background and foreground like that, okay? But you get, the texture coming in here, but it's more of a transitional kind of texture. All right, so I'll go like this over here. See, don't re-ink this too often, okay? Utilize the very dry application of it on whatever applicator you're working with, okay? See that? So I can get a really nice light grayscale application of it, and then, I can tap a little bit harder and get a little bit more repetition in there, and I can get a darker version of that Clair. See, when you start utilizing your media or your objects in portions, partials, okay, then you can really extend the usage of them. Now here, what I'm doing with my ink is that I'm utilizing kind of a portion of it in some ways, you might say, okay? I'm utilizing it in a very dry brush application. So instead of Clair black, I'm getting Clair whatever, 5% gray, 10% gray, 20% gray, 30%, depending on how much I apply. Okay, but you apply it where, now see, at this point in time with one tap, it's like invisible. You can't even see it. But still with multiple taps, and let me do it on a white piece of paper, okay? See? I mean, that's like a 5% there. I mean, I need to re-ink at this point in time, but, oh, okay. See, I can press a little bit harder, and I get more ink coming out of it. So it's really utilizing your existing things in multiple ways, multiple impressions, multiple saturations in this case. All right, so see that? Doesn't that kind of contain that composition really nicely up top there? See, it's kind of that vignette. It's like portrait photography where you, you know, someone goes in to get their picture taken and they get the prints back and it has this kind of darker perimeter around them, okay? These days it's probably some sort of digital frame they put on something, but back in the day, you know, a photographer might have a backdrop that has that kind of vignette on there. Or you'll just light his, you know, with studio flashes and stuff like that. It'll kind of naturally kind of darken things. Or in the printing process, maybe even. Okay, so I'm putting this down here. And, you know, you just make it as dark as you want, you know. I'm putting some underneath my trees here to create a little bit of a shadow like that. But see, that kind of contained that off there. It's fairly subtle. Now over here I have my open road, but I think I still want to add some of this down. Let's re-ink it. See, I kind of blot it off to get kind of a feel of how much I'm going to apply. And then when I start applying it, I use a very light touch at first. Okay. And see, I'm going with repetition. I'm not trying to get it so dark with one tap. I'd rather get it as dark as I want to with 20 taps, 30, whatever amount of taps, okay? I'm not going to close this off completely, though. I want to still have that road kind of continuously come down this way. So I try not to close it off here with, you know, like darkness or something like that. Okay. See that kind of transition where it's darker and a little bit lighter in here? It's because I stay out here longer before I start taking it in. All right, I think this looks pretty good over here. I'm going, ooh, that's really dark right there. Let's try to blend that out a little bit. Don't do that. Okay, so I went really dark over there, so I'm going to darken this side in just to match it, you know, a little bit more. So those trees are casting a big shadow right there. I'll blend that out with a little bit of a colored pencil too. The colored pencil is going to be a really good tool for us on this vintage paper to get some of the more detailed areas. All right, see that right there? I don't know if you can feel, it has kind of a better kind of a compositional feel now. I call this tipping the edges, okay? It's going on the four corners, okay? Or tipping the corners, maybe. All right? Okay, now what I like to do is I like to give my objects some visual weight, okay? It gives them opacity, it gives them more presence within the scene, okay? So I'll show you how easy this is to do. Okay, now we're going to be creating lighting here, believe it or not, with a black pencil. You're thinking, well, that's going to create shadows, but in creating the shadows, by not coloring in areas, it means you're retaining light, okay? So this little area in here, and this is what I'm going to do with the black pencil too. It's just going to be a very light application of it, okay? So see this right underneath my chapel here? I'm going to add in a little bit of tone, like this. Some shade. Created by the chapel, okay? It kind of sets it into the scene a little bit more, okay? Okay, now this tree in the distance here. Okay, I'll just put a little bit of a shadow at the base of it. Okay, now see, there's other things going on. See this road here where it's just inherently darker like that. I've already created shadows on my stamps, okay, so I'm just going in here and just reiterating that more with the colored pencil. Okay, so this coming down this way, I can kind of extend that darker area of the road, curvilinear road out this way. Maybe I'll have it kind of dissipate right in here. Here's the road up here. I'll kind of bring this down, and I'll create a little bit of a shadow at the base of this fence here, okay? Just a little bit of a light gray, like that. Trees right in here. Some shadow work up here, okay? Underneath this tree. What I'm doing is, I'm doing this right here. It's a little bit darker next to the object, and then it transitions out like that, okay? It's like a shadow, like a real shadow. I put my hand right here so you can see it. Like I don't know that I have too much studio lighting right here, but right next to the pencil it's a little bit darker, and then it's lighter as it moves away from it. I don't know if you can see that there. And what's this is doing is, like I said, it's kind of setting them within the piece, okay? It's saying that that object is sitting in this meadow or grass or whatever. It anchors them in. Here's these people right here. And there's a shadow on the design, but I'm just going in here and just reiterating it a little bit. Here's this tree over here. You can add this into your sedge filler. You know, your sedge filler is in there and it's textural. You can kind of reiterate those textures. Where you see that little sedge filler texture, you can kind of go in there with a light touch and just fill that in a little bit more. It varies the grassy area more, like instead of like a flat carpet or something like that, now it looks like it's this undulating, you know, grassy terrain within that space, okay? You would see variation in kind of unmowed grass, right? Now, if you didn't get your vignette, you know, real smooth, you can also just extend it with this, or if you want it to go in here more, you know, this darker area, then do it with the colored pencil. Just do it very lightly. Work your values. This is pretty fun, this antique paper. I mean, the color scheme is already taken care of, so, you know, you can just kind of work with shadow for the most part, you know, and all the objects were just stamped in black ink. You know, makes for a pretty easy, you know, very simplified media. Whatever media theme or whatever for this piece. You know, black ink and a colored pencil. You know, black colored pencil. Okay, so let's see, adding a little bit more shadows right in back in here maybe. Okay, now there's that really dark area right in here. Let me try to mellow that out a little bit by blending it out a little bit, like so. Okay. I'll make this tree over here cast a little bit of a darker shadow to merge with that big black ball, you know, blob right there. I'll go a little bit heavier down here just to match that, you know, degree of darkness in that corner. And I'll match it a little bit on this side. That corner like that. So what I'm doing right here is I went really, really dark right there. So I'm just bringing some other areas within the piece to that same level of darkness so that that won't look out of place. You know, we can say it's going on in different areas within the scene. So, you know, I darken that right there. And that pairs well with that. You see what I mean? Certain textures of certain things stand out. You can kind of minimize it by doing something to it, but you can also kind of minimize it by bringing in something of that sort to other areas of the scene so it doesn't look out of place. Okay, so, yeah, I think that's, I don't know, I mean, I'm doing this, I mean, it could have been done 15 minutes ago or something like that, too. But I think the stronger vignette kind of contains everything. It kind of mellows things out a little bit more. Um, I don't know. These scenes come, are pretty quick and they're pretty fun to do. It's kind of, I almost feel like these are photo stamping if you know what that is. If you don't, you should look up photo stamping, Stampscapes photo stamping. I think I might actually have I'm not sure if I might have a playlist for photo stamping too, but it's where you would stamp a scene out just on a pre-printed, photo print. Of clouds or something like that, skies, and you stamp right on top of it. And I like to color mine with alcohol markers and stuff like that. But the thing that this has in common with it, this type of paper, is that it's your color scheme and a lot of your texturing and things like that going on in the distance are already taken care of, okay? And let's take a look, and let's look at some sort of perimeter on this. I'm going to save myself some time and just, I'm going to have a border up there, already the same dimension, so I just need to cut two sides. But I think this would look good on, its own type of surface here. I think that looks pretty good. So, let's see. Let me just grab some of this crafter's tape, and we'll just do this quick version of this. It would be good if I go really close, but I can mount this whole thing later on too, onto something heavier. This stationery is just standard text weight, lightweight paper. But maybe I'll mount it onto a piece of stiff cardstock, and make it more card-like. I don't know if it needs it though. Someone could, if they wanted to, they can mail out a piece just like this. I think it looks better with, everything looks better kind of with a little bit of a matting, don't you think? Or mounting. Okay, well, not bad. I'm just saying for the tape. Okay. It's reasonably flat. And I'll just try to get this roughly, or as close to, that same, border as the top and the right side. Okay. And let's go down here like so. Sometimes I give the base a little bit more of a border, just, for more kind of a bottom. I came across there. Don't do that. I screwed up. You saw me screw up. I came across this and I cut that off. Let's do something here. Here's how you fix something. Maybe. Okay, let me cut this off here. How did that happen? This is my first scene of the day. I don't wake up until like much later usually. Mentally, I'm saying. Okay, let's see this right here. Okay, that matches up pretty well there. It matches up enough for me. Okay, so let me hit this right here. That's going to go like that. I'll mount this onto a piece of cardstock later. Okay, let me see which side am I going to use. That right there. Let me see like that. Okay, so let's see. Let's hit this right down here. People are saying, "Oh, we made a mistake." I make mistakes all the time, you know. There's a lot of times in all my pieces, I don't know, I'm getting these unexpected things that happen. But, you know, I don't see it as like a reason to um, start over again or to toss anything out. I always tell people don't toss anything out. Um, you just kind of work with it and find your solutions. Sometimes you come up with the best techniques that way. But anyways, see, there's a little thing down there, yeah, but I don't know. It largely just blends in anyway, so you know, who cares? As my beginning painting teacher used to say, and I always hear her voice, but she'd say, "It's not precious." Mostly it was in regards to when we were deciding whether or not to add something additionally or whatever, or if something went wrong, you know. She saw someone even minutely stressing out or disappointed, you know, she'd always say that. Okay, so anyways, pre-printed vintage photo paper for a pretty quick scene. Now this is a, you know, this is a half-page scene. What are we at? The 45-minute mark. It's not too bad. You know, so, I mean, if I did a half-page scene, you know, in theory, it would take like 20 minutes, 20-something odd minutes or something like that. You know, it wouldn't be the same composition, but, you know, certain elements like that, composition right there would take, you know, considerably less time and whatnot. And here we've mounted it up as well within this time frame, so not too bad in terms of the time. And I think these make for really interesting looking pieces in terms of that aged look. It's really fun to do and fun to play around with your you know, your pre-printed existing backgrounds because it might make you kind of consider where you place certain things, you know. These different types of papers like this. This one has a heavier kind of perimeter like that. So maybe, you know, if you stamp your chapel up here, it would be in darkness. So, you know, you kind of adjust accordingly. Here's one. These ones have more of this, less of a black, you know, area like this one does and whatnot. So who knows? Maybe you use something like, you know, the lighter ones. Maybe you'd use like a, you know, walnut stain for some shadow work or something like that in there. You can play around with it, you know, and see what you can get out of these types of papers and whatnot. So you probably have a bunch of papers in your collection if you're a crafter, stamper, scrapbooker, etc. And there might be some interesting ones in there that you might not have considered as kind of a foundation for scenery before. They might be kind of extreme, who knows? But you can usually work some different types of imagery into there accordingly. Now, the louder and the more contrasty the background is, you might go with more of a solid style of imageries, dark pine trees or whatnot, you know, rather than open images like this, you know, chapel in the background. Like I said, if there's big textures going on in the background, if you stamp the chapel over it, you'll see that texture going right through, you know, that chapel in there. So, you know, the louder it is and the more contrasted, like I said, you just use more of your solid styles of imagery. Like the fences would, you know, go with anything because they're just dark and bold and whatnot. You know, the horse is very bold. The road, you know, like I said, if it's patterned, you'd see the patterns right in that road there. So maybe go with some of the lighter types of imagery for your more open styles of images. Okay, so all right, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.